Let's start today with a history lesson, or to put it another way, a trip back to my youth and based on the average age of you, my audience, as I understand it, well, to yours too. Now, in my last year at university, something called the milk round happened. Now, if there are any younger people watching at all, then a milk round was what a milkman did when milk used to be delivered to your doorstep. Honestly, it was. But this analogous round was a tour by big companies and many of the nationalized industries. Again, a very strange and outdated concept, but there was British Steel, BP, the gas, electricity and water boards, the civil service itself, and the companies, some still around, Unilever, British Foods, Shell come to mind. Some you'll know, some you won't. Now, in most cases, when you joined one of those companies, that was it. You were there for life. This still happens, I guess, if you're going into one of the professions and become an accountant or a solicitor. The effort involved means you generally hang on in there, although I know many in both jobs who wish they hadn't. Anyway, those big companies or the civil service or government department would wrap their arms around you. Generally, they take care of your financial well-being for life. You had guaranteed inflationary or more pay rises because the unions were still, many would say, in charge. You'd have a gold-plated pension, probably a house you could afford with a mortgage you could afford or rent you could afford. Strange to say it, but changing jobs or being made redundant was almost foreign or perhaps a very American concept, probably until the early 90s. Redundancy then had quite a stigma attached to it. Now, I won't call them halcyon days because there were many downsides. I doubt we were really happier, rose-tinted glasses and all that. But a lot has changed. Being made redundant is the norm. Those nationalised industries have disappeared, and for most, staying in the same job with the same company for life is almost unthinkable. One of the consequences, though, is that you do have to take some responsibility for your own financial future. Along with those jobs for life came those gold-plated pensions, final salary schemes, which for every year you were there with the company gave you a proportion of your salary at retirement, which was generally age 60. You could end up with 2/3 of your salary. If you had some savings, your retirement income could be pretty much the same as your salary when you left. Now, those gold-plated pensions have disappeared. Personal pensions started to become the norm again in the 1990s. And although we now have workplace or auto-enrollment pensions, and they're now mandatory, unless you take responsibility for your own financial future, you'll end up either hoping to inherit something to help you along the way or scrambling around as you approach retirement, a retirement you might not be able to afford, certainly not by the time you're 60. My point is that back in my day, a phrase I hate to say, not knowing about this sort of stuff didn't matter as much, but now it does. And well, they don't teach it in school, and they should. When you're 18 and you suddenly, as is often the case, are given a credit card, well, you're going to go out and spend the money. When you see 10% or so coming out of your salary to a pension scheme, you're going to think, hey, come on, that's 40 years away. I want to spend it now. I might not be here in 40 years. Although most parents and grandparents I know who save for their children say to me, I don't want them to get their hands on it, they'll blow it. Well, yes, some will, some won't, but they'll never know better because unless we start to teach at least some of these basics at school, ignorance is going to be bliss. It has to be at least as important, well, as sex education, doesn't it? We did used to have what they called citizenship courses, I remember, but they were really there to fill in the time after exams and before summer holidays. we had careers officers and careers evenings, and there has to be some way that all this sort of stuff can be linked to at least give a grounding in some sort of financial basics, which of course may not seem relevant then, but, well, if it's well taught, it could come back to mind and maybe at least point a few in the right direction.